We have a fascinating range of thoughts which have come up, and Vivek brought that out very well. The NEP and COVID were two big seismic events that probably would impact education as we understand very well. COVID did, and NEP would. So you have a past and a future, two events literally uh, fast forwarding education in multiple ways. And one major theme running through, especially with, India has always been a competitive examination driven nation. We had a JEE for IITs, we had a NEET for medicine, and now the last bastion is out. Both humanities and pure sciences are coming under CUCET. So you have a trioca of competitive examinations which will determine college admissions. And where that leave normal board assessments, their outcomes and their relevance is a big question which many schools and colleges would have. So the first question I would throw open to all of you is, considering the competitive examination based or led admissions scenario in the country, is there a future for summative assessments anymore? Examinations, as we know, is dead.
See, I'll give you a few stats. For example, JEE last year, around 13 lakh people appeared. NEET last year, around 18 lakh people appeared. And the seats are around 50,000, 40,000. So if you see the success rate of any competitive exam, which is less than even 1%, and it is typically the demand and supply, part. But there is a similarity if you see the competitive exams in India. I'm typically talking about the graduation level, whether you talk about CAT, GMAT, GRE, CLAT, most of these exams, more than subject, they check the skills. If you see most of the exams, what do they ask? They ask aptitude, they ask reading comprehension, they ask critical reasoning, they ask verbal reasoning, they ask logical reasoning. What are they? These are not subjects. And that's where what Vivek was trying to say, that subject and skills are different. If you don't know how to make a poetry, doesn't matter whether you know Hindi, you know English, or you know Spanish. If you are not a good poet, you cannot write poems irrespective of the languages. And that's where fundamentally the competitive exams, the complement the education system. So people sitting in the education, they should not see that competition is going to ruin the education. In my opinion, it complements. And why it complements? Because you don't have any other choice. You need to create competition because the population is very high. So my, again, submission here is, there are two learnings. One is self-learning and second is assisted learning. The self-learning is a continuous journey. The assisted learning, where the enablers come into picture, be it the teacher, be it the technology, be it the curriculum, be it the new initiatives what NEP is doing it. But if you want to develop the skill set of a child, you need to develop it in the early age, within 14 years of the time. And that's where assessment is important. So in my opinion, assessment is not a blocker. The competitive exams are not the blocker. It is the skill set development that bridges the gap between that nucleus and the periphery, the centrifugal force. And that's where assessment is all about. So assessment should be there. And in the coming days, maybe technology might change, but the learning pattern, the learning experience, and the learning outcome which I was talking about will remain the same as long as you are able to assess the child in a very early age on their skill set, not through the subject, but through the assessment. That's my submission.
Dominic?
We hear quite a lot these days about employers who employ young people who have just come out of an institution having studied a subject directly relevant to the job they are going to do, but those employers will still say, we have to start again with these students. and we have to teach them the things that are actually important for the environment in which they will be working. And this then brings into play all the issues, for example, like collaboration. Therefore, if we track back, and this goes back to the point I was making about tracking back within the system to see what works and what doesn't, should we not be spending more time getting our young people to collaborate, to work together on projects? And should that work not form part of, in the end, the summative assessment of what has actually been achieved overall? In the UK, we did for a time have quite a good balance for, particularly at GCSE level, which allowed the involvement of project work and the assessment of that project work to go alongside final examinations. And during that period, it was quite interesting that more students, or a greater range of students, were found to be competent, to have achieved, to have got to an outcome that was good. We then railed back on that, and we have moved much more to just these final examinations. And it worries me looking at the young people, for example, in the school where I'm chair of governors, and I am unconvinced that if it were not for the particular help which we try and give all young people in our school to learn these additional skills, they would not be being assessed in any way for the things that are going to matter to them in later life.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's working. So I touched upon this briefly, and I will sort of extrapolate your question from just competitive, because that's again a high stakes exam. That's a make or break in a lot of ways, and that's what summative is. And I like I said, there is a visible intent to move from a summative and to formative. And the problems with summative, first of all, just to answer your question, no, you cannot do away with summative, overnight. And the simplistic explanation for that is it's such an established model. You cannot dismantle an established model like that, overnight. Having said that, the problems with summative high stakes examinations are well known. They don't provide a holistic assessment of how the student has done and is doing. Second is it's like I said, it's a very stressful experience for students as well as the faculty members, and it sort of encourages a behavior where you're just chasing a grade instead of getting better, and like that. There's this line in that movie, Three Idiots, right? Success ke piche mat bhago, excellence ke piche bhago, right? So don't try to look good, try to be good, So that's where the essential difference from summative to formative comes. And you take an example like a driving school, right? You don't just read books on driving and then end up for the first time behind the wheels of a car on the day of your driving test. What you do, the right way to do it is you have many, small, low stakes, driving, tests, not tests, but driving experiences where you knock off a few cones, you get timely advice from and, periodic feedback from your instructor, and that's how you do it. You can't, just wing it at your driving test, right? But the other, so what I'm calling for probably is a balance between these high stakes, because ultimately you cannot, I think, this is my personal opinion, that there should be some amount of pressure that students are subject to, because that you're readying them for the corporate world where you are judged by outcomes, but there has to be a fine balance between summative and formative, high stakes as well as low stakes. And I guess the onus to make these summative assessment phenomena more amenable lies with technology vendors like us, and we are doing a lot. How can we improve the student experience while they take, and how can we reduce the stress? We're building a lot of nifty features into our products to to improve the, reduce the stress on students and faculty and make it more flexible.
Chennai?
I agree with what Vivek said. There should be a balance between summative and formative assessment. But with the India perspective, if you talk about competitive exams, NEET is also a competitive exam. But you see that wherever there is a competitive exam, there are kind of training schools available across the world, different kinds. But in India, we have factories. Best example is Kota. So what happens ultimately is there is a competitiveness has been hijacked. There is no healthy competition between the kids. They are something like a factory which produces, you have to aim for 90 plus or 80 plus. The fun of learning what is there, that goes off. They're more of mechanical, and they learn for sake of the getting that kind of percentage, not because of the interest of it. So this is a very sad scenario. And even if you go for the higher competitive exams also, there is a lot of imbalance in the society. So for example, if you see a lower level government job competitive exams attracts people who have done double graduation, post graduation for this kind of job, which they could have got better job. But the love for a government job or a pension or a security, we are totally a skewed population of people who look into these kind of things. I think assessment is too much in our society, and repeated exams. If a student has taken 12th exam, why there is a need for a NEET? Everywhere we are putting them, testing them again and again. I think there should be a standardization of this which is required. Thank you.
Lovely. So we have a
May,
whole range of...
may I make one more
Please, please,
one
by
more
all
comment? Just I wanted to link two things together. The comment was made earlier about it would be good to give more power to teachers. And if you think about a centralized system that relies on final examinations, there is an implication that we are not trusting our teachers within the process. If we empowered teachers and had more confidence in our teachers at a system level, we might be able to move to a situation where we would trust their judgments, and it would be more easy for everybody who needs to accept the assessments that come out of education to recognize the value of formative assessment as much as summative assessment. But there is an implication. To have confidence in teachers implies good professional development for teachers, and I often think that is the thing that gets missed within the process.
Very true. Right from early 1930 onwards, with the first Higher Education Commission of India, the entire thinking in the Indian education system has always been to produce eligible workforce with basic set of verifiable skills or knowledge competencies. The space and freedom to experiment and give space to the teacher to look at the student individually has always been very restricted and in package. And progressive higher education regulations have rather gone on the other side of the extreme rather than this side of the experiential divide. And larger issue is also that we are a very opportunity-starved nation. We produce about 22 million children every year. About 11 million children drop out by the time they reach their 10th standard. And just about 11 million write their 12th standard, which is the eligibility, of which we are able to educate about 6 million at best. So this is an exceptionally still, we are a GR of 25%. So we are an opportunity-starved nation, and that has implications across the board, which also explains why a double PhD applies for a Kalasi's job. So that is the scenario within which the nation operates. I wouldn't take any further time. I'll open the floor for questions. I just have one request, please make it a question and not an essay. Thank you. The floor is open. Should we take 3-4 questions and then deal with it? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, is there a mic on that side? While we get this right? Yeah.
Yes, hello.
Yeah, so his mic is working.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Sharif from Kerala. Sir, our assessment system mainly focus in theoretical than practical. So Manish sir mentioned that skill assessment, what is the parameters? And you already mentioned that JE or NEET, whatever may be, they assess not only subject, even logical. Do you believe that this is enough for skill assessment? And even those who are getting admission at IIT also, the dropout is there, sir. What's your suggestion? Thank you.
Thank you. I think great insight and good question. I'll give you one perspective, and that perspective disclaimer is this is my opinion. You don't need to quote for that. The winner of a rat race is still a rat. So you need to decide that you want to be the part of rat race or you want to hone your own skill set. I'll just give you an example, China. China is a most populous country and China is a manufacturing hub. The fundamental difference, how I see China and India at this point of time, and India should learn from China, is China focuses on child skill development, not on the curriculum. Whereas all of us in India, we endeavor, we move towards academic excellence. But academic excellence does not lead to success because that is a process, that is a journey. But every journey needs to lead to the destination. And that's where the new skill development ministry came in. So if you see whether it is a sector skill council or whether the state government, skill councils, everywhere there is a assessment pattern, and the assessment pattern clearly says that what are your areas of interest? Do you love what you love? And do you do what you love and you love what you do? And that's the most important. Just that I want to see my child as a doctor, that does not mean that my child should go to, go to Kota or learn for medicine. So answer to your question is, what are the matrices? Trust me, at this point of time, there are few companies, including us, who are working as a 360-degree of the learner's outcome and experience. For example, Vivek was talking about HOTS. High order thinking skill is a part of the right side of the brain of every child. But you cannot develop that part of the brain once the child crosses after an age. And that's where, if you see today, the question pattern of the competitive exams are also changing. 10 years back in CAT, people used to say that, what is the name of the poet? Now today says that, in your opinion, what do you think the author wants to speak? And these are the 4 options, and all the 4 options are correct. You need to choose the most appropriate, answer. In order to answer such questions, you don't need to necessarily be a doctorate. Rather, you need to develop a skill set where you need to be, logical in thinking that, okay, I need to get in tune while I'm reading the passage. I'm just flowing with the rhythm of the passage and I can go through it. And that's where probably why the exams like UPSC exam, now they have changed the pattern and they are called CSET exam, and they have introduced the patterns like this.
Wow. Since Manish got 5 minutes, he also took 3 minutes to answer the question.
Thank you. Or I can take your answer
Manish,
later.
Let's take a few more questions, please. The lady at the back, you got the mic? Professor, I'll listen to him and come back to you. She raised her hand first, yeah.
Good morning. Thank you for the inputs. I'm Dr. Sanjay from Countryside International School, Surat. Now, we have talked a lot about NEET and JEE examination. My question is that how can we create a culture where techie and fuzzy, like humanities, they come together and create something great? Because technology is the must, but along with that, we need political science, psychology, language. So, how to create that eco culture?
Perfect. Can we have the next question? The lady, please.
Hi, sir. My name is Bhavya. I'm from pre-primary school. The question is to Manish, sir. Sir, as you said, who is responsible for the learning outcomes? So, who is responsible, sir, according to you?
All right. Thank you. Third question, Professor Prasad.
According to me, I have the answer.
No.
After your
We
answer,
don't want
I'll.
answers, we want questions. You're a journalist now. Yeah.
Good morning to the panelist.
Ma'am, just a second. He's asking a question without a mic, unfortunately.
Can I?
We cannot hear you.
Can I?
No, just a second.
Sorry. Am I heard?
Yeah, better.
I'm Nagaraj from Acharya Pathshala Educational Trust, an 88-year-old institution in Bangalore. Is there a way out to overcome the much dogged quota system and the much stigmatized reservation system that has been a hiccup even in the admissions of professional colleges and universities?
So why do you want to get us beaten?
If so, no, the last part of the question, this is the real question. If so, how so? If not, why not?
All right. The last question before the panel responds.
Hello.
No. We have her, ma'am, and then I'll come to you. Yeah, you have the mic with you, right?
Yes, namaskaram. Traditionally, the teachers, what Dominic sir told, I would like to ask a question. Teachers are not liking the observation part as it's being judged. But you also told about professional development of the teachers will help them to do all these things. But schools like us coming from the Tamil Nadu and urban area like Kadalur I'm coming from, we don't get professionally developed teachers. We are still developing the process and the process still goes on. But when you say they are being judged and on an observation, what's the right move or what should be the alternative for the statement that you have given, sir? Thank you.
Dominic, did you get that question?
It's one of the things that I do understand is very difficult is when you have a centralized system, it is quite difficult for individual institutions to take their own initiatives. But I would suggest starting with sort of baby steps. Almost inevitably in a school environment, in any particular school, you will have a range of teachers who come with different experience and different quality of teaching. If you can create within your school a real community of those teachers so that they act together as professionals, forget what anyone outside is saying, and beginning to work on them as a group. Because if they are willing to share with each other, that will be the starting point for the sort of thing that I was talking about, and that is the openness of sharing the way in which they work in the classroom. You can then, within an individual institution, do the other thing that I was suggesting, which is to have a standard pattern for every lesson, which makes lesson planning much easier. It also means that when teachers go from one classroom to another and watch each other, they will recognize the different parts of each lesson and the success or failure of what a particular teacher is doing. They will learn from the good things. And what I mean by, obviously, by the planning for a lesson is the idea that if you start off at the beginning of a lesson, making clear to the students what is going to be the outcome of that lesson, and if during the course of that lesson you take time to assess whether the students are with you or not, and you have a good process to recap what has been achieved at the end of the lesson, you're helping the students, but you're also ensuring that they know that that is exactly the pattern that the next lesson with a different teacher is going to take. It's all part of that idea of making it work for you in an individual institution. And that, to me, would just be the starting point of something that actually any school or college could do.
Lovely. So you could teach, learn, repeat. So we have 3 questions. I don't know whether we want to take all 3 of them. First is, of course, how to make assessments techy as well as fussy. And we have a really interesting question on reservations, though not related to assessments in some sense. And then we have a question as who's responsible for learning? Who is responsible? You could take a minute each if you want.
I'll probably give a shot at the first one, which was asked regarding the intersection between tech and
first.
humanities.
Yep.
And I don't know if how many of you got a chance to go to the exhibition hall there, one of the stalls. And if you're going there, you should visit stall B6. It's one of the best stalls, anthologies. Okay, but if you couldn't resist the plug. If you go there, you know, in that Niti Ayog had a stall there, and there was this one girl who had this strange kind of a contraption, and I went over to her and asked her, you know, what this is. So it was this intertwined bamboo sticks, and there's something in between, and I asked her, you know, just sort of curiosity, what that is, and she said it's a sort of a device that she was from the medical field. She had worked along with mechanical engineers in her university to come up with a low-cost this device which can provide protection to joints, etc. And so this intersection between disciplines, which is interdisciplinary education, is already happening. It has to happen at a much wider scale. But I think the wheels are already in motion. This is just one anecdotal example, but we are having a lot of conversations with many, you know, universities, policymakers about how they want to bring this aspect of interdisciplinary education and make it more mainstream now than it currently is. But I think we are going in the right direction, but we have to pick up pace. Thank you.
She knows the answer, Manish, but still she needs the answer from you.
Yeah, before that, I just wanted to add on the humanities side. So if you see, the only thing which is constant is change. And today, let me tell you, the jobs are also rapidly changing. The ecosystems are rapidly changing because of technology. And trust me, today, more than engineers, it is the designers who are in demand, the cloud computers, the way psychologists and data science, data analytics. These are the courses which does not need a engineering or medicine or any technical degree to become these kind of, you know, experts. And that's where it goes back to my point is humanities is a subject, but what skill set you want to take? Do you want to take a skill set called, okay, I want to take language and I want to become a poet. If you want to become a poet, it's a skill set. Now you can choose a language. In which language you want to become poet, you will be a poet. So being poet is a skill set. Choosing English as a language and become a poet in English is a education or the subjects. That's my submission. Otherwise, the poet as a skill set, as a job will never die. Subject might change.
Time up. So I think it's safe, time's up, but we would have one or two questions at best.
Sorry, could I just add a point about who's responsible for outcomes?
Mm-hmm.
The answer I would like to give is that everybody should think they are responsible for the outcomes. Government should think it is responsible for the outcomes by providing the right structure and the right resources. Principals should believe they are responsible for the outcome by good leadership. Teachers, fairly obviously, through the quality of what they do within the classroom. Students, very importantly, should believe that they personally are responsible for their own outcomes and the outcomes of their peers as they work together. And don't forget if you can do it to involve the parents, so the parents believe they have a responsibility as well.
Lovely. Normally we think other than ourselves, everybody else is responsible. Good.
I
Across
echo
the
to
board,
it.
there is a
This
responsibility.
question was asked to me, but you nicely answered. Thank you.
Last few questions. We have 3 here. Nobody at the back, right? So hold on.
Can I?
Lady first.
Thank you. I'm Amita Singh. I have a question to all the panelists and everyone in this room as well. One thing that is very, very important in terms of assessment, and this is data that I came across, is that across the world, all assessments have a gender bias. And it's all designed to, assess the model of learning, mostly male, the pattern, the questions, even the kind of assessments. So which is true, I can, share the research. It's true. So isn't it important? And another observation I've noticed over the past 3 days is that everybody speaks and refers to a learner as a he. So we are constantly building this bias. Isn't it important at a policy level and individual level to start looking at, so higher order thinking skills is something that needs to be kind of looked at from a different perspective. That's my observation and question. Thank you.
So good morning, everyone. So I am Dr. Kranti Kumar. I'm from Adilabad, a remote place from Telangana. I have a question, sir. The assessment of very same for everyone. So, but the thinking skills and the facilities of other differ from everyone, from rural to urban areas. How to fill this gap? As well as I have a submission, sir. Knowledge is migrating to rural to urban areas. So where instead of facilitating the knowledge at rural areas, how to fill this gap too, please?
I understand the Minister from Namibia wanted to. Can we give the mic to her, please?
Thank you. I think examinations or assessments are both a blessing and a peril. And I'm saying this because when we give exams as educators, we want to select the best. But in that process, at least in my part of the world, you find that those who fail, you push them backward or aside. And if they continue to experience the failure, it can be a reason for them to exit the system prematurely. How do we, as educators, now enriched with technology, can begin to identify those who are talented, but not necessarily within the content of the curriculum, but maybe in other areas that they can use to really adapt to life later? Thank you.
Profound and deep question. Maybe we should start with that. Dominic? Vivek?
The way in which we differentiate between our young people in the classroom and within an institution as a whole is extremely important. I recall one child who at the age of 9, young boy, was extremely disruptive in the school that he was in, and the teachers were inclined just to ignore him, send him out of class or whatever. And then a particular teacher heard him in the playground singing something from Wagner. And they suddenly realized that this child's knowledge of classical music at the age of 9 was incredibly strong. And they began to talk to him about his interest, and basically from there developed an understanding of what this particular child needed, and slowly, within his particular classroom environment, it was possible to integrate by stretching him in particular ways to have him as properly part of the classroom and not a disruptive element. He did indeed go on to become quite significant in the jobs that he ended up having. I take that as an example because I think part of the problem relating to failure is that we do not recognize early enough in schools the problems that particular children might have in being part of the norm. And if we can understand their individual needs earlier and then be able to differentiate in the classroom, we begin to solve those problems at the earliest opportunity.
We have two more questions. One on looking at education. It's more a comment than a question. Looking at education from a feminist lens and the moment of knowledge from rural to urban area.
I had nothing to do with planting that question. She's my colleague, but nevertheless, I'll answer that question. I think it's a valid point. And yes, there are corporate, policies and, workshops we do about, how our language, our behavior has to be more inclusive. And the same can be done in the field of education as well. But I guess that is more a symptomatic treatment of the problem. I think the root of the problem is how the outlook in general of society towards, women changes, and that should organically translate into, change in behavior. But it can start both ways, it can start from the behavior as well. So, yeah, but it has to start from within.
We have a minute, so any last words from anybody?
Setting apart the assessment part, for a country like India, I think we should be thinking differently, because the kind of population what we have, rural-urban divide and all those things, we should move towards implementing the good practices for assessment from across the world. We should move towards a system where a student can have exams on demand. Whenever the student is ready, he thinks he should be ready to write the exams. That is the way forward, I think, for a country like India.
Lovely. We have overshot way more than what we were allotted. So on that note, I would thank each of the panelists for their valuable inputs. We've had an interesting discussion, though more questions remain unanswered in a true panel fashion. Thank you so much to the panelists, and thank you all of you.